When we start to look at the horoscopes of political figures, we're looking at a very, very big picture. We're not just looking at the horoscopes of individuals. We're looking at the picture of the collective karma, basically. What's going to happen to this whole country, this whole group of people, to the world even. And it's very easy to get wrapped up in this idea that these people are directly responsible for everything that's happening. But in the very same way that you're not directly responsible for everything that happens at work, even if you manage the place. You're not directly responsible for everything that happens to your children, even though you raise them. Politicians, it's the same way. They're actually not directly responsible for everything that's happening. The picture is much bigger than that. The forces are much larger than the forces of any particular person's ego. Okay? And in fact, the egos, the individual beings, are actually riding the waves of these collective forces. So it's very important when looking at any type of political things to always look at the stage. The politicians, their charts, that's the players. But the stage has already been set. And so we're going to start this examination of the Trump cabinet, what to expect over this Trump era of time, by looking at the inauguration chart. The inauguration chart is going to show us what to expect, the stage, how the stage is set for the next period of time that Trump's in office. That's expected to be 4 years of length. Of course, it may not be. He may die. He may get impeached. If any of those things happen, the moment that happens, this chart ceases to have any effect. Now, the thing is, this chart, ever since 1937, in the United States, the inauguration date has been set as January 20th. And at some point, they decided that January 20th at noon. So it doesn't matter who was elected. This was going to be the inauguration chart. So the person who got elected is going to have to fit this chart. The cabinet that he chooses is going to have to fit this chart. Trump didn't have the power to make the sky have these planets where they are right now on this inauguration day. Okay? No ego, no individual has the power to say the planets are going to be here on this day. What happens is the greater forces have decided that January 20th at noon is the inauguration day. And that reveals the long-term destiny of the presidential abilities, what the presidential cabinet is able to do during its term. And then the players, the individuals, the politicians that fit that picture are going to be the ones who win. And so it's important to look at this chart so we can start seeing the parallels between the Trump chart, his cabinet's charts, and the greater picture charts, one of which is the inauguration chart. The other chart that's important is the Lunar New Year chart. The other chart that has some weight is the solar year chart. The other charts that have a lot of weight are the eclipse charts. So all these charts are indicating what's going to be happening to this country, to the United States, and the politicians are just really the bubbles on top of these huge waves that are moving through, the collective karma of the United States. Okay? So we're going to start with this chart. Okay? Because this chart was already determined before Trump. This chart was determined before Trump was born. Okay? Now what's interesting you're going to see, and if you go back and you calculate the chart for 8 years ago when Trump was elected, you'll see there's some parallels between those two charts. It's like, wow, you can see why he fit the bill for that era of time. Okay, and then when we look at his chart, you'll see how his chart fits these charts. Okay? Alright, so in this chart of January 20th, every 4 years, at noon, every time the ascendant is going to be Mitra. Every time. Whoever the president is, Mitra is going to be the ascendant at the swearing in. Now the time I'm using is 12:02:09, which is right when Trump finishes final vows. So it's always going to be around 10:02. They get done with their final vows, with their inauguration vows, their swearing in ceremony it's called. And that's the chart. Okay, so that's the time I'm using for this. And of course it's for the capital, Washington, D.C. It's always going to be a Mitra Lagna. Now that's a good thing, because Mitra Lagna is a good Lagna for swearing in. It's one of the 3 better ones. Okay? The quality of Mitra is it's the friend. So it has a friendly attitude. Okay? And that friendly attitude comes from the law of potential and recognizing that every being has within it all potentials. And what a friend is someone who unleashes the potentials that are beautiful. That's the idea. So a king, a leader who has this vision is a wonderful thing. Okay? So it's nice that the United States has, maybe on choice or accidentally, chosen to make this the ascendant. Now, some years, during some terms, this will be a better inauguration chart. I mean, a better Lagna because of what the planets and the chart is doing to this ascendant. And it'll be a twisted view of friendship. Okay? All these Adityas have this capacity, but that capacity can get twisted. So say we saw Saturn, Rahu, Moon in the ascendant one year on an inauguration chart. Now we know this quality of this Aditya is going to be twisted into something that's destructive. Okay? So, but it's great that the United States, it's always going to be this Mitra. Okay, now, the other thing that's going to be constant is that the sun is going to be up here in the 10th, or possibly in some years, not as many years, but in a few years, it'll be in the 9th. In either case, that's a nice place for the sun to be. Up high in the sky, that's a great place for the sun to be during an inauguration. Okay? Now, on the years that, okay, so just to explain this chart, we're going around clockwise just like we do with the South Indian chart, but we're using a circle instead of the squares, okay? So, the sun up here it's also a nice place for an inauguration chart. So, the time that just happens to be the time for the inauguration of the U.S. president has some general merit to it, but that can dramatically change depending on what all the other planets are doing. Okay? Now, most of the years, that most of the inaugurations are going to happen with the sun up here in the 10th in Parjanya. Now, Parjanya is the rain god. And the idea of that is to provide all the energy that's required for growth and abundance. That's what the rain is. It provides what the plants need to grow and feed the people, feed the cows. So in Vedic mythology, in Hindu mythology, the rain god, anything to do with the rain is very, very auspicious because life essentially depended on the rain because we were dealing with an agricultural society. And so water from the skies was critical. Okay? So that's a great place for the sun, first of all. Now, one of the things is that January 20th is the solstice. Not the solstice, it's an ingress into another solar month, into another tropical sign of the Zodiac. And we have a rule that we never want to start something within a certain amount of time from the sun changing a sign. Okay? And for the solstices, it's actually 3 days. We don't want to do anything for 3 degrees of the sun travel. For the equinoxes, we don't want to start anything new for 1 degree of sun motion around the eclipses. So a degree before the equinox and a degree after the equinox, we don't want to start anything new. On the other sign changes, we don't want to do anything new 16 minutes before or 16 minutes, by that I mean minutes of sun travel, which is a little over 1/4 of a degree, before and after the sun enters a sign. Okay? So in some inaugurations, the sun is going to be in that dead spot. If we see that, we know right away that inauguration is not going to have a full force to it to create changes. It's not going to be able to do a whole lot of permanent good. When a sun is transitioning a sign, it's a transitory thing. It's never going to allow the establishment of anything that's going to be long-term lasting or working over a long haul. Okay? So we don't want to have an inauguration when that happens. This inauguration did not take place during one of those ingresses. The sun was at, 53 minutes into the sign, so we missed that window. Okay, but if you go back and look at other inaugurations, I have to tell you that because that's a very important thing to know. So, we have a sun that's in a, it's not too much on the ingress. The ingress has happened. Long-term changes are possible. Okay? Alright. So those are some basics that you're going to find and have to look for. They're going to be similar in every chart of inaugurations since they said it was going to be at noon. Okay? The sun was almost always going to be in Parjanya, or maybe it'd be in Pusha. Okay, sometimes. Parjanya is generally a better place. Now, so we're going to start analyzing this chart now. It's going to take some time, and it's all new, but you'll see how revealing it's going to be. So the sun up there in the 10th, we always got to start, when we work with the Adityas, to look at where the sun is. Because the sun, the Adityas are the sun gods. So the position of the sun is always a critical Aditya in any chart. And here it's Parjanya, the one who wants to not exactly nourish, but wants to provide everything that gives the growth and productivity that allows nourishment to take place. Okay? Basically to give the energy, the ingredients that's required for growth and nourishment. Just like the rain is the primary ingredient. Okay? The river water doesn't work as good as the rainwater because the rainwater has nitrogen in it, right? It's the nitrogen that really makes those plants boom. And so that's why the rain god, the god of rain, the rain cloud, is such an auspicious symbol in Vedic mythology, in Hindu mythology. So we have to analyze the condition of this sun now. Okay? This sun is not with Saturn. It's not aspected by Saturn. It's not aspecting Saturn. The sun is not with its other enemy, Venus. It's not aspecting Venus, and it's not aspected by Venus. This is a good sun. Okay? The sun likes being up in this sign. The sun is the king, and it's the king whose natural responsibility is to provide that rain. The reason Indra is the king of the heavens is because he's the one that releases the rain. Not what essentially makes him the most important deity. Not only does he release the rain, but with his lightning bolt, he releases the nitrogen. Okay? And so the king has this, and that makes Indra the king essentially in Vedic mythology. And so the king needs to be connected to the rain. It's a good place for the king. So the sun up there in Parjanya is very, very good. Now the other thing, the law of Parjanya, the rishi, is a person called Bharadwaja. Now, all these rishis live interesting lives. Now, one of the most unique aspects of this particular rishi is he's considered the primary proponent of Ayurveda, who originally brought Ayurveda to mankind. Okay? And the law of this sign, of this Aditya, is the law of health. It's simply the law of health. And what that means is certain things impact your health. Ayurveda is the science of life. There's a science to life, what supports life force and what destroys life force. And that science goes way above and beyond what you're eating and even what medications you're taking. It really has to do what impinges the life force towards disease and death, and what releases the life force towards health and longevity. Okay? This sun's in great shape up there, which means during this 4 years, the Trump administration will support the health, the physical health, the promotion of longevity, the promotion of health, over this 4-year term. Now me, because I'm into health, and health I consider an important thing, I like that this is happening in the chart. If you look at the chart from 4 years ago, we had a 4-planet conjunction, including Saturn's Sun, up here in the 10th, which means nothing that was going to be done during that administration was going to be beneficial for the health. And now, of course, the whole COVID fiasco, right? And all that stuff, which is still such a political sensitive subject. But I think most people look back now and go, my God, that was not handled in an ideal way. Okay? How could it be handled in an ideal way when we have a Saturn-Sun conjunction up there in the 10th? Okay? And not even the 10th, but in the sign that is the law of health. So the laws of health were not followed. So this administration will help us get back to the laws of health. That's going to be an important thing. And the Sun is so often here in the United States chart, in this particular Aditya. It's one reason the United States is so regulatory about health. They're so focused on the law of health, law of health. But lots of times, you get an affliction up here. And when you have an affliction up here, the law of health gets twisted into, well, this is healthy, but it's really not. It's really promoting the opposite. It's extinguishing the life force, not releasing the life force towards health. So during the next 4 years, we see some benefit to the health how health is administrated in the United States. Okay? It's one of the positive things in the chart. And it doesn't matter who was elected. This would be something we can expect for the next 4 years. Okay? Okay, now, if we look at this chart, the next sign we have to jump to is the sign that's the strongest sign according to Gemini principles, which is basically the sign with the most planet is going to be a prominent sign. That is Data. Saturn, Venus, and Rahu are there. Rahu doesn't count as a planet in this because he doesn't have mass, but 2-planet conjunction in Data. There's no other 2-planet conjunctions. So this sign, Data, this Rishi, this Aditya is going to be very, very important during the next 4 years. Data is the bearer. It's the supporter. It's like the mother giving birth and taking care of the child. It's that hard initial work of bearing life, bearing anything. It's a very difficult task. It takes a tremendous amount of strength. Okay? And we have a Saturn-Venus-Rahu conjunction up there. This is a huge problem. Okay? This is the tarnish on this chart. The rest of the chart, as you see, is pretty solid, but this is the blemish. And it's a serious blemish, because when you get a planet that's with Saturn, and it's also with Rahu or Ketu, that planet becomes shamed. And the shamed planet is the planet that mucks things up the most. And what's being shamed is Venus. So what is Venus? Venus is the chart of diplomacy, is the planet of diplomacy. Okay? Now, we get this, diplomacy is almost this bad word in the way we use it in today's context. I'm being diplomatic, which means I want to shoot the bastard, but I'm going to play nice for appearance's sake. We're not talking about French diplomacy, like from the old, movies and stuff. What diplomacy is, it's founded on the basis of the knowledge that if I take care of life, life will be there to support me. So, if I have a cow that gives me milk, the better I take care of that cow, the better and longer I'm going to have milk. That's a diplomatic relationship with the cow. Okay? So with everything part of life, we can have a diplomatic relationship, which means we take care of that thing properly. With care and sensitivity, we consider ourselves with the well-being of that thing, knowing that that's going to benefit us in the long term. All right? Diplomacy is not about burning bridges. Diplomacy is not about hurting people's feelings, even if they're idiots, because they're still people. They still are beneficial. They're still life. And all life is waiting to support us if we take care of it. That's the quality of diplomacy. That's the quality of Venus. Venus's job is to get what we need from the outside. The only way we can do that long term is if we take care of what's on the outside. So people go down to the Amazon to get Ignatia, this herb that's supposed to be that people think is a miracle herb that's only good for a few things, but people take it for everything. And they destroy a lot of habitat, a lot of forest to get this particular plant, this particular herb. That's not diplomatic. They're not taking care of the life of the forest. So when they rape the environment, that's a bad Venus. Okay? Venus is shamed up here. The problem that this administration is going to have is a lack of diplomacy, a lack of taking care of life. And we saw this just in the inauguration where, Biden's right sitting there and other, important people, and Trump is saying like, after years of corruption, he's basically saying, yeah, Kamala and Biden have been corrupt, they're sitting here. That's not taking care of life. Look at their inauguration chart. It matches what they were able to do and what they weren't able to do. Okay? Slapping them in the face in a public venue is not diplomatic. They're still life. They still have ability. They still have connections. Taking care of that life would have been the diplomatic thing. The reason people don't like Trump, the reason people don't respect Trump, the reason Europe hates Trump, many Europeans hate Trump, is simply because of this lack of diplomacy. Here's the cool thing. 8 years ago, when he was elected president, on that inauguration, Venus was also in Data with Mars and Ketu. So when Mars is with the planet and also Ketu Rahu's there, that planet gets shamed too. So there was a shamed Venus in that chart too. So it seems like when it's time to have a shamed Venus in the inauguration chart, Trump gets elected. So we know already, without even seeing his chart, that one of the first things we need to look at in his chart is Venus. And when we do, we know we're going to find a problem with that Venus. Okay? All right. So, we have a lack of diplomacy, a lack of taking care of life. And the Venus is taking care of life because it knows that's necessary long term. Venus is the one that has the ability to project extremely long term, which means some of the moves of this administration will not consider the long term ramifications. Venus is the minister to the king that says, hey, that will work, but these are the long term ramifications. Is it really worth it? That's the Venus's job. And here Venus is being shamed. That means the king is saying, screw the long term. Don't be stupid. I'm not listening to this. I'm disrespecting that. Okay? So we're seeing a lack of considering the long-term resolutions on life, on the outside of where we get things from, in the relationships with people, because we get things from people, in our relationship with foreign countries, which always has to be diplomatic, because you hurt some foreign country, you hurt their feelings. 20 years later, something else happens in the world, and that event from 20 years ago can make the decision whether that country is in your corner or starts bombing you with the other people. So, and here we have a lack of diplomacy again. Okay, Venus is the worst planet in the chart. So we have to spend a lot of time on this. Now, as I mentioned, Data is the supporter, the bearer. Okay? Saturn, terrible in this sign, in this Aditya. Why? Because Saturn is lame, he's worn out, and he's tired, and he's stupid. So, he's too tired, he's too lame to bear support a lot, and he's not smart enough to figure out a way to support something when he's physically unable to do it. So simply, Saturn is the weakest planet when it comes to bearing and supporting in the context of this Aditya. So Saturn's doing terrible there too. So this Aditya is bad. And what that means is, what Data is, it's like I said, it's like the mother. It literally has a mother connotation of the bearer. The one who does the hard work that holds everything up through its own strength in the beginning. In the beginning of life, that's the mother. And in the country, we call it like, Mother Russia, And we have Mother America. It's like, what can this country bear? What can this country support? And it's the worst sign. What this tells us is that the United States is in such bad shape that it cannot support a whole lot right now. It cannot bear a lot. It's like a worn out mother. Okay? This tells us right away that a lot of the goals of the Trump administration will not be able to be realized simply because America does not have the strength to bear it, to bear a completely great new future. There's just not the strength there. The foundation isn't there. It's the bearer, it's the supporter, it's the foundation, this Aditya. It's not solid enough to do all the miracle things that the Trump administration or any administration that was sworn in during this time would have wanted to do. So we need to understand right away the foundation's weak. And the foundation is not only weak, it's being hurt by a lack of diplomacy. Okay? Which means a lack of taking care of others, taking care of life, taking care of the outside, which is where we need to get our stuff from. Okay? Now the rishi of this Aditya is Pulastya. Now he's most important, most famous we can say, for being the father of the Rakshasas. The Rakshasas are the protectors. Okay? We think these Rakshasas as the evil beings. Well, they've become evil, but originally they were the protectors. And there's a whole level of psychological truths under this idea that the protectors become the enemy. And that's what works on a psychological level. The fact that this is the worst Aditya means that the protectors are going to be working really bad. They're the enemy. Okay? What happens is when there's a time we need protection, and we need to protect at that moment. But if after that moment of needed protection, we continue to protect, the protectors become the monsters. The protectors are the ones that keep you from having fulfillment, keep you from having your life work out. So what this means is, it means an overprotective quality that's going to turn protection into damaging. And this lets us know that some of the policies of the Trump administration are going to be designed to protect the United States, but they're going to be an overprotection. And it's going to be protection in the wrong way, overprotection. It's not going to consider the long-term ramifications. Venus, the diplomat, in a bad shape in that Aditya. And those overprotective measures are going to cause problems, especially in the long term. So again, say you get hurt. I'll just explain this. Say you get hurt emotionally. And for a little while you need to protect your heart. And then you need to heal, and then you need to step forward, open your heart again. But what happens if, after you get hurt, your heart is always protected? You can never open your heart again. Then you go through life sabotaging every relationship that comes along. That's the idea of these Rakshasas, when the protector becomes the monster. And since this is the worst sign in the chart, the worst Aditya, we know the protection will become the monster. The protective measures taken will be damaging. Okay? And we all know that's a huge part of the United States agenda, Trump's agenda. Protect the United States, don't take from the United States, get rid of the illegals, create tariffs so people don't take this from us. Like, he's so concerned about protecting. These protective measures are not going to be balanced. They're not going to be diplomatic, and they're going to miss long-term ramifications. That's the primary problem in this chart. Now, as I mentioned, this is the mother. It's the foundation. And it's the foundation of strength to do the really hard thing, to dig really, really deep. Think how hard a mother has to dig to give birth. That's this bearer, this supporter of Data. This Aditya digs that deep. The energy to dig that deep is Mars. That's why Jaimini says Mars is the mother and Venus is the father. Okay? The mother does this most hard work in bearing life. The Father does this very wonderful, pleasurable work in bearing life. So he's indicated by Venus. Okay? Mars over here is in Indra. Okay? Now, Indra is a great warrior. Indra means basically the undefeated, the victor, one who's always going to win. And I wrote myself a note on this about something I don't want to forget to tell you all. Let me just pull it up again. Okay. Mars loves being in Indra because Indra is the great warrior, the one who achieves victory. Mars is the grit, the energy for those victories. So there's a lot of push here. There's a lot of force, a lot of power with Mars and Indra. And it's hard to stop Mars and Indra. There's a force here that does not stop. Okay? Just like a mother does not stop no matter how much it hurts until the baby comes out. That's what Mars and Indra is capable of. It's one of the strongest positions for Mars to be in, actually. Okay? And so there's this powerful, powerful force. And so the Mars is good. There's a will, there's a force there to move forward, to bear good things. But like I mentioned, there's a lot of ways this is being done wrong. But a good Mars is going to help push some positive things through. But we have to analyze this Mars more fully. Mars is not aspected by Jupiter, okay? One of his friends. He doesn't have a super strong aspect from the Sun, another one of his friends. Saturn's in neutral, Venus is in neutral. His enemy is Mercury. And Mercury over here is aspecting Mars relatively strongly. It's not exactly 180 degrees. It's far enough apart. It comes out to about 40 points out of a possible 60 points of aspect. So it's a 2/3 strong aspect of Mercury to Mars. That's going to set Mars back a little bit. It'd be better if Mercury was not causing any aspect to Mars. But Mercury is the primary enemy of Mars that sets Mars back. Because there's certain things Mars has to do, no matter what. It has to do them no matter the odds for success. Mercury plays the odds. Mercury only wants to bet on the same safe bets. So he observes it, he figures it out, he studies it, and he says, all right, it's a 51% chance, I'll take it. The 49% chance, I won't. That's how Mercury gets ahead. By always playing the odds, a 51% chance or better, he's always going to end up ahead. Okay? And that's the sensible, safe way to go through life. All right? But there's times in life where you don't play the odds. If you're in a burning building and you have to jump out of the building and 2 floors onto concrete or burn to death, the odds of you jumping out 2 stories and not dying and certainly not getting hurt are less than 50-50. But it doesn't matter. You have to jump out the window anyway. Because if you stay in the house, you're going to burn for sure. So Mars is a planet that does not play the odds. What Mars does is he plays the logic. Logically, what's worse? Getting burnt in the fire or taking a 20-foot fall? Right? But getting burnt in the fire sucks a lot more than falling 20 feet. So Mars does the logical thing. Even though he doesn't even care what the odds are. So, Mercury over here, when it aspects Mars, one of the reasons Indra is such a great warrior is because he has the capacity to do the logical thing, especially when Mars is there. So, there's a force in this administration over this, in this inauguration chart to do the logical thing. In time of crisis, do what's logical. Don't play the odds. But then there's this little voice over here, Mercury, that's saying, wait a minute, let's measure the odds. Let's see if it's a win-win. And that can cause delays in the response of Mars that results in mistakes. Okay? So there's going to be some mistakes in critical situations because instead of doing the most logical thing, there's going to be thought put on the odds. And why does someone concern themselves with the odds? Because they want to get ahead safely. Okay? There's a point you have to abandon safely, and you just have to jump out the window. We can see a lot of this jump out the window qualities in the Trump. Okay? But what you're going to see during this administration is times where he's going to be weighing the odds, and he's going to make decisions based on the odds that will not necessarily lead to the right decision. So some emergency situations, some critical things over the next 4 years will be botched, or during his administration. However, all in all, Mars is better than it's worth. It's got a full force of benefit from being in Indra, and a 2/3 bad force from Mercury. So, it's a 60-40 thing. 60% of Mars dealing with things that have to be done, emergency crisis situations, will be handled pretty good. 40% will be botched. And the other thing that's going to impact the ability to deal with critical situations is this over here, the data. Is there the energy there? Because again, Mother America is tired. She's worn out. You got to run to the window and jump out of it sometimes. Does Mother America have the energy to run out the window? Sometimes it's going to be lacking the resources, the foundation to do what's most needed and most logical because of all this affliction up here. So, I have mixed feelings with Mars. It'll do good enough, but it's going to botch some things up. It's going to muck some emergency critical situations up, okay? But what really concerns me is this doctor that I talked about. Okay. One of the nice things we've got, we're going to go back to a nice thing now, is Jupiter is in Varuna. Varuna is the all-encompassing sky. And Jupiter is the all-encompassing planet. You know, Jupiter is the most broad planet. And Varuna is the most broad Adityas. It's the all-encompassing sky. It's the capacity to encompass everything. Jupiter is the ether element. It's also the capacity to encompass everything. So Jupiter loves being in Varuna. Okay? It's very, very happy again. This is the second house. This is prosperity. This is wealth. The rishi of Varuna is Vishwamitra, which means, not Vishwamitra, Vashishta, which means the most wealthy. He's the most wealthy rishi. Jupiter is your wealth, right? So you can tell Jupiter loves being in this Aditya. Why is he most wealthy? Because he has a cow, a magical cow. And anything he asks that cow, it gives. If he goes, gosh, I'm getting attacked, I need an army, boom, there's an army. If someone comes and visits with 20,000 people and he has nothing in the fridge, he just goes to his cow, serve fine food to these 20,000 people, and boom, instantly there's 20,000 people. So he has the magical cow that gives whatever's asked for. And so he has the most wealth, the most abundance. This is the Aditya of abundance, of wealth, of everything. Okay? And it's not just wealth, money, it's whatever you need, abundance of all things. And Jupiter, of course, is the planet of abundance. So there's a desire and energy for America to become more abundant. Okay? Varuna, in astrology, we know the moon is ruled by the deity Varuna. Now, how it really works is, Varuna is the greatest of the Adityas. And who's greater than the Varuna is Soma, the moon. He's greater than Varuna. Okay? But they're connected. So in Prashara, it gives the deities. Agni, fire, is sun, and Varuna is moon. He's also considered the god of the cosmic ocean. Okay? Varuna. But it means the all-encompassing sky. It's what encompasses everything. And what encompasses everything is the force of love. So this Aditya has the force of love behind it. So, Vashishta is the rishi of this, and he's the law of abundance. Now, what is the law of abundance? The law of abundance is consciousness. It's a law of consciousness. Varuna is a planet of an Aditya of consciousness. The moon, Varuna, is a planet of consciousness. The moon is the one planet that's completely female. It does no actions. It does no work. It does no activities unless it's in bad shape. Then it does those things and nothing works. The moon is about consciousness. What's in our consciousness manifests. So it's the abundance in consciousness. It's a healthy Varuna is a abundance consciousness, a wealth consciousness. There's plenty of love in the world consciousness. Okay? Afflicted Varuna is poverty consciousness. There's not enough wealth. There's not enough love. So I have to be jealous. There's not enough wealth. So I have to be stingy. You know, those are showing the opposite of Varuna. Okay? So abundance is a mental quality. It's a conscious quality. It's a quality of consciousness is what I want to say. So, Jupiter here is all about abundance consciousness. However, that's the ideal. However, we have a problem here. That is, the moon is over here in Vishnu Aditya, whose rishi is Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra is the law of stealing. Okay? The law of theft. Vishwamitra was so poor, he started stealing. And who did he want to steal from the most? Vashishta. Because he wanted to steal the magic cow. So he tried to steal the magic cow. And he got up a great army to go steal the magic cow. And Vashishta simply, and to defeat Vashishta and get a magic cow. And Vashishta simply said to his magic cow, give me a bigger army. And poof, there's a bigger army. And Vishwamitra gets defeated. And this went on for thousands of years, where Vishwamitra was trying to get it up on Varuna. Now Vishwamitra, all these laws are honorable laws. There's something called the law of theft. There's times it's appropriate to steal. Vishwamitra means the friend of all. He's the best, nicest, if you want to meet a rishi, he's the one you want to meet. Because he's a friend to everyone. He will sacrifice and give away everything he has, including thousands of years of hard work, to help somebody. And see, the law of theft is, if you need something to survive, it's acceptable to steal it, if you have an unselfish heart. But if you're stealing out of selfishness, that twists the law of theft. And that's why you'll see afflictions in Vishnu, with the Vishwamitra Mitri, will be the connivers, the con men, the thieves, the stealers, the liars. But when healthy, big-hearted, giving, charitable, but yes, in times of need, they'll do whatever is required. And that's acceptable. One of the times it's acceptable to steal is if you're starving. So like that movie, Les Miserables. The guy, as a kid, he steals a loaf of bread because he's starving. According to the law of Vishwamitra, that's completely acceptable. And if he shared the bread, he would be really following that law. And I believe he was stealing that bread for his sister, if I remember the movie properly. I don't think it was just for him. But anyway, the moon does not like being here because of this war between Vishwamitra and Vashishta. Okay? That went on for thousands of years. Now, ultimately what happened in this war was that Vashishta became enlightened after being constantly challenged, and he became enlightened because he wanted to be greater than Vashishta. And Vashishta, of course, knew this was just the path of Vishwamitra to enlightenment. And he played the game, and he was essentially Vishwamitra's guru. And Vishwamitra recognized him as that by touching his feet when he finally was enlightened. Okay? But the moon is the cow. All right? Here Vishwamitra has stolen the cow. And now what this means is, you got this beautiful thing of let's become prosperous. And the Trump administration during this period of 4 years will be cultivating this idea of prosperity, of consciousness. We are prosperous. Let's be prosperous. That's healthy. But then, where's that prosperity going to come from? We're going to take it from somebody else. We're going to take it from the Chinese. We're going to take it from this place and this place and this place. We're going to take it. That is not in accordance with the law of prosperity. The law of prosperity is one of abundance. There's enough for everyone. There's enough for the Chinese and the Mexicans and America. There's plenty. If this moon was in a wonderful place, that would be the quality of thinking during this 4-year term. But it's not, because the collective karma of the United States is not where enough people have a truly abundance consciousness. There's enough of poverty consciousness going on that thinks there's not enough in the world. We have to take from others to get our abundance. No. The law of abundance is there is enough for everyone. So this moon is what's preventing this term of presidential power to not consider deeply enough the law of abundance, that there's enough for everyone. There's actually a solution out there that there's enough for everyone. But it's not going to be found in this administration. It'll be found somewhat. Abundance will increase. But not with this full abundance quality of consciousness, of truly there's enough for everyone. And too much emphasis on defense. Too many protective measures that are going to be harmful in the long run. Okay, so it's the Venus and the Moon that are causing problems in this chart. And know what? Those are the feminine planets. Sun, Mars, Jupiter, powerful, solid. Okay? This is a male, patriarchal, dominated thinking force. The male planets can move forward. But what happens when the male moves forward? Without the female, we get into an imbalance and we get into trouble. There's a reason God made women after He made men, because He saw how much men could muck things up on their own, right? We need to have the female guidance, the female sensitivity of Venus and Moon to maintain the balance and order of things, especially in the long term. Okay? So, in this, and it doesn't matter who was elected during this time, this was going to happen. But as we look at the charts of the players, of the actors on this stage, we're going to see how they fit this better than the people who didn't win. The people who didn't win couldn't have played the role that this chart is asking for. Okay? Other thing going on. With Rahu and Datta, it shows the critical thing to be done is to build the foundation, to build the support. America does need to become a stronger bearer. This administration is very well aware of that. Okay? But with the Venus there, and with the Saturn there, America is so tired it doesn't even have the energy hardly to build a foundation. And Venus there doesn't have the diplomacy to build the longest, safest, long-term foundation. But that's the essential goal that has to happen during this time. But it's not going to get met over this next 4 years. We are not going to be a strong country at the end of 4 years. As strong as a country as Trump envisions it, as people want it to be. It can't happen with an afflicted Datta. Never going to happen. Okay? We'll make some benefits with the health. We'll make some abundance. But we're not going to be a completely anchored, powerful country during this time because of what I mentioned about here. It's just not going to happen. There will be some positive changes, though. Okay, Mercury. We haven't talked about Mercury much. Now, Mercury here, fortunately, is not doing a whole lot to the Moon. Mercury hurts the Moon. Or, sorry, Moon hurts Mercury. Other way around. Mercury is not helping the Moon much. Moon is a friend of Mercury. The primary thing that Mercury is doing is causing trouble, actually, because the amount that he's influencing Venus, let me double check how much he's influencing Venus. Yeah, Mercury only supports Venus to 15 out of 60 points, hardly any. Mercury is a friend to Venus. Mercury is a friend to the Moon, and he's helping out Moon to just 6 points, a negligible amount. On the other hand, he's hurting Mars. And Mercury is not being helped by Venus, his one best friend. He's not being helped by Sun, aspect his other friend, which rarely happens. And he is being hurt by the Moon to 45 out of 60 points. This is not a great Mercury. Okay? That's going to be a problem. Okay? Mercury has a strong relationship to Mitra because Atri is the Rishi of Mitra. Okay? Of Mitra. And Atri represents the law of all potential. What planet has all potential? Mercury. That's why when we look at the doshas, every planet has a dosha. Mercury is a mix of all three doshas. Okay? Mercury is always a mix of everything else because Mercury has within it all the potentials. Why is that? Because Mercury is the planet of learning. By learning, we can open this potential or that potential. And the law of every being has within it all potentials is the law of Atri connected to Mitra, which is the ascendant. And that law lives out through Mercury. Okay, that's why Mercury is not into the death penalty. Mercury's into the, okay, yes, they've been destructive, but they have this potential. How can we unleash this potential? We can teach them to be a productive member of society. People with good Mercuries, people with good Mitra, Aditya, see that in people. They would never put someone to the death penalty. People with those things in bad shape, especially a bad Mitra, oh yeah, death penalty. They're up for the death penalties, okay? And the way we discover and unlock our different potentials is we try things and then we experience them. And when we do that, we experience this potential is more fulfilling than living out this potential. And then we decide to live out the more fulfilling potentials, which are always the benefit potentials. But Mercury up in this Pusha is not particularly great and is not particularly bad. And he's aspected most strongly by his number one enemy, the Moon. And that's when Mercury becomes too emotional. And Mercury gets too imaginative. The Moon is a planet of consciousness. He needs to imagine, and through that imagination, things become. Well, we can imagine ourselves, we can visualize ourselves, and we'll become that thing. But we can't imagine the world a certain way and expect the world to work that way. Okay? That's why the Moon does good aspecting the self planets, Sun, Jupiter, and Mars. Because through visualization we can change. Like gymnasts, they can lay down if they're sick, practice their routines, and without exercising, do their routines better. Okay? But they can't imagine their opponent doing worse routines and then have their opponent do worse routines, okay? So imagination works on the self. It's a powerful tool for changing the self. But it's not an effective tool for changing the world or changing the outside. Mercury is a planet that's here to get things from the outside, to try things on the outside. And the Moon there is imagining this is going to work because I need it to. I need it, therefore it will work. No, that's not true. That the outside does not respond to what you need. So we never want Moon to influence Mercury. That's a huge affliction in a chart. Venus is not helping Mercury. Sun is not helping Mercury. Nothing's helping this Mercury. Mercury's a troubling planet in this chart. Mercury's hurting Mars and he's hurt by Moon. Mercury's not helping anyone and he's not getting helped by anyone. Instead he's hurting Mars and getting hurt by Venus. So Mercury is a huge, huge problem in this chart actually. So Mercury's job is to try things and find what works. And here, there'll be blindness to that sometimes. Where the Moon will say, I need it to be this way and I imagine it to be this way, therefore it will be this way. But it won't be. Okay? People have needs and they put those needs on the outside and they're in such need of something. So this means America has needs. instead of trying to figure out what's going to make those needs work in a healthy way, instead of changing oneself basically, which is the only way we can get a need met, is if we change ourselves first. There's a need to get from the outside, and there's this idea that because I need it, it'll happen. So America, during the next 4 years, is living somewhat in a fantasy world. Moon, starving Mercury, is living in a fantasy world. Believing something will be that way because we need it to, not because trial and error has proven it to be so. Okay? If you see people come in with like a strong moon, starving Mercury, especially about relationships, they need a relationship, and they'll come in with a relationship that so many things are wrong, but they'll still imagine it's going to work. Keep being involved with the person until forever, and because they don't think there's other options. America is not open and not clear on lots of options. They have certain needs. They expect the universe to fulfill those needs because they need them to. There's an element of living in fantasy, and that's going to impact the administration and make for many unrealistic, let's say, policy. Okay? And it's just not going to work. Okay? The way Mercury is designed is you try something, it doesn't work, and then you backpedal before anything bad happens. Okay, so you go on a date, you find something wrong with someone, and you go, well, it's nice to meet you, goodbye, and then you go to the next person on your list and you try them instead. No harm done. You spend a day with someone, a night with someone, an evening, whatever, and you're like, okay, that shoe doesn't fit. No harm done. That's a healthy Mercury. That's his job. But when Moon is starving Mercury, what happens is you need to be in love. You go on a date. The date's not good. You say, but I need to, so therefore it will work. And you go on a date again with that same person. It keeps happening. You keep going on dates. You get married, and now you're in deep shit because you're married with someone who's completely not suited for you. That's what happens with Moon Mercury. Okay? You don't backpedal when the information shows you this isn't what you want. You keep believing it's going to happen. Okay, you live in a fantasy. And people love to jump on board the Mercury Moon fantasy. People love following Mercury Moon fantasy because, because people believe what they want to believe. So if you have a need for something and you want to believe that this fantasy is true. So America is under the influence of fantasy. Americans want certain things to be done. They don't know how to go about it in a healthy way. They need it. They're believing it's going to happen, even where it's unrealistic. So we're going to have some unrealistic experiences over the next 4 years. And again, this is the chart. This shows the state of Americans. Okay? This isn't because Trump is waving a magic wand and making everyone have a Moon Mercury. This is the quality this is the consciousness under which Americans are living, and so now they're going to have a president and an inauguration time which is going to support that. So we have a very mixed chart. Mercury is causing problems, Venus is causing problems, Jupiter's fantastic. There'll definitely be a huge development of resources, but again, there's not this full prosperity consciousness that can really heal prosperity long term. Because of the moon being up here in Mitra, where it's too much idea of taking because there's still not enough. There's not the consciousness of there's enough. And so that's a problem. So that's the chart we have. The positive things are improvements in health. Some things will get pushed through to make America a stronger country, but with that weak, afflicted data, America will become a little bit better, but we won't become a solid founded country the way it used to be. It's just not going to achieve that point of stability and balance during this term. Okay, enough said on this chart. That's the highlights of this chart. I hope you can appreciate how the Adityas are showing the symbology, and we'll see how this manifests over the period of the next maybe up to 4 years. And next chart I'll be looking at is Trump's chart, so we can see how he fits this pattern of Adityas that we've seen in the inauguration chart. And remember I said 8 years ago when he was elected, we also had a shamed Venus up in the same Aditya. Isn't that interesting? So the first thing we'll look at is Trump's Venus. Then we're going to look at what's going on with his Mercury and his Moon, because of the fact that we'll see reflections here. We'll see some reflections. Now, one of the important things I want to mention right off the bat is we didn't talk about Ketu much. It's in Twashta. Twashta is the chariot builder. And the chariot he builds is the body, but also all vehicles. Okay? And the Rishi is Jamadagni. Jamadagni is the father of Parashurama, the Rishi who went around the world killing Kshatriyas, and the Venus incarnate avatar of Vishnu. The avatar of Vishnu that flowed through Venus. So Venus has a powerful, powerful connection to Twashta. Vehicles are Venus. Jamadagni represents paternal law, which is Venus. Okay? Venus is the father in Gemini. Mars is the mother. And Parashurama, the son of Jamadagni, was the incarnation or the avatar related to Venus. And so we have 3 strong connections of this to Twashta. Okay? And when Ketu's in Twashta, you have a very strong paternal lineage. Okay? When we look at Trump, we're going to look at Twashta in his chart. There's something very, very important about his chart in regards to Twashta. Okay? The paternal law. The paternal law in this day and age where we've been living under patriarchal societies is a conservative idea. Okay? So conservative, we could say, Twashta, Ketu and Twashta is conservative in this day and age because it's been a patriarchal age. Now, if we were coming out of a maternal age, Ketu and Datta would represent the maternal age. Okay? The conservative age. Alright? So understand that. So we're coming from a conservative background. Yes, the conservatives are in charge right now. However, look at Venus up there. What needs to be born right now? When the weight that needs to be carried, the foundation that needs to be laid right now, Venus, the paternal lineage, is shamed. It doesn't have the capacity to do it. And that lets us know all the answers are not going to be found in conservative thinking right now. Okay? Luckily we have a good Mars, and there'll be some open-mindedness, there'll be some non-conservative capacity in this administration. Okay? That's really good. That's very important. Okay? But Venus is ruling Ketu. When you have... That's the scariest thing about this chart. The rulers of Rahu, not the rulers, but planets connected to Rahu and Ketu, or aspecting them, have a huge influence. So, Venus is with Rahu and in terrible shape, which means Rahu is struggling. Saturn hates being in Datta, and he's with Rahu, so Rahu's suffering. Ketu is aspected by a troublesome Venus and a troublesome Saturn, so Ketu is in bad shape. When Ketu and Rahu are in bad shape, life gets very confusing and very hard. And we don't have, neither Ketu or Rahu is in a nice place, which means our foundation, Ketu, is not great, and ability to move forward is not great. And this alone tells us that America can only evolve at a snail's pace during this administration. This is in this time of America, that starts January 20th on this inauguration a few days ago, there is not a powerful, healthily emerging evolutionary force going on. Okay? Rahu and Ketu are just too beat up. And that's going to cause problems in America over the next few years. Okay? And we're not going to achieve a point of stability because of that. And again, Datta wants this point of stable, solid, secure foundation that can support no matter what happens. No, ain't going to happen. The foundation could just crumble at any minute with this. America needs to be very, very cautious in how they develop their foundation, but it just doesn't have the ability now. It doesn't matter who was president, it just doesn't have the ability. Okay? Some good things will happen, as I mentioned, but this is concerning. The good thing is that the Aditya is not there, the sun itself is not there, not happening to the ascendant, but the planet most connected to the ascendant, to Mitra, is Mercury. And Mercury, as I mentioned, is causing trouble and in trouble by the moon. And again, the Rishi Atri is the law of all potentials. Mercury is here to see the law of all potentials, to test and try the potential and learn and educate and develop the potential. This Mercury is not capable of that. It doesn't want to really look at what the potential is. It wants things to be the way it needs them to be. Okay? Mercury is, let's see. Okay, so Mercury is short-sighted that way. The Rishi of Mercury is Gautama. Gautama is the really, really interesting Rishi, actually. Okay? One of the things he represents is the law of inaction. That when unsure, it's acceptable not to act. You know, we have this saying, no action is inaction. No action is an action, and if by not acting, you screw up, something goes wrong, you're to blame. We like to say that, but that's not true. The law of action is, if you're not sure, it's permissible not to act. If you're not sure. So if you're sure and you don't act, oh, you're to blame. But if you're sure, if you're unsure, and you're still trying to figure things out, and you don't act in time because you're unsure, trying to figure things out, there's no karma, no bad karma in that. Okay? So, Mercury up here should have all the time in the world and not act when he's unsure. But the moon is going to make him act when he is unsure. And that will be a problem. Because any planet in that sign, in that Aditya, needs to never act when it's unsure. And if it acts when it's unsure, it'll cause more problems. And this Mercury will act when it's unsure, before it's done the research, before it's done the measurements to surety. Okay? So we can say this is the least impulsive sign. It's actually slow to act to the benefit. So it's like in the movie where the two guys have to turn the keys on the opposite side of the room to detonate the nuclear bomb, right? And one guy's turning his key, the other guy's like, still not sure, and he's still not sure, and he's still not sure, and he knows he's going to get shot and court-martialed if he doesn't turn the key, but he's still not sure, and he doesn't turn the key. And then finally the guys who are saving the world figure out that this whole thing was AI set up, and that launching those missiles would have been the worst thing. So his inaction saved the world. That's the quality of Gautama, one of his qualities. Okay? And here we have Mercury acting on what it needs. I need this, therefore I'm going to act on it. No. When you need something, you need to examine it, observe it, figure it out, and decide if you should act on it. This Mercury does not have that ability. So we're going to see decisions made without proper observation and research that will lead to problems. Okay? But at least sun is good. I love it because, again, I consider health such a critical foundation to our lives. Anything that helps health makes me optimistic. We have the sun in a nice place. We have this administration moving America forward in a health respect, at least. So one good thing. That's the best thing, actually. That's the single best thing. Okay? Mars down here in Indra will help people develop more in accordance with their essence, give people more energy and strength to live more. This is what's really me. This is really what's my life. That's also positive. Okay? Jupiter, developing more abundance, also positive. But then Moon, Mercury, Venus, as I mentioned, not so good. Okay? So that's what I see based on this chart. Now, in addition to this chart, the eclipse charts, The Lunar New Year chart will have an impact on a shorter term basis. But this is the long term of what we can expect the capacity of the Trump administration is capable of. So as we look at those other charts, and as things happen in the world, we need to fall back on this chart and say, oh, is Trump capable of this? Is this administration capable of handling this problem? This chart will give that answer a lot of the time. We need to look at this chart and their chart and whatever year chart or eclipse chart is being activated at the time. But we always need to look at this chart, Trump's charts, the other players' charts, to see, predict what's going to happen on a more detailed basis. But this is the foundation of this administration. And it's not the best foundation. It could be worse. I mean, there has been worse. There's some good things here, but it's not strong enough to fulfill all those dreams that some people have, that roughly half the population has over the next 4 years. It's not going to fulfill all those dreams. Some things will come true, but that's it. Okay, thank you.